Most people are crib babies.
Who?
Which crib babies?
Oh, crib.
Crib. Like they're brought up in a crib where parents didn't really hold a child enough, and children were brought up in a crib, and a crib baby has a lack of proper affection, proper intimacy. So when we grow up, a child until the age of 13 is meant to be on the mother's bosom, and that sounds like an odd thing, but literally in the energy of the mother. With other words, the aura of a child isn't developed until 13. The child does not develop its own aura, it duplicates and mimics the aura of the mother until 13, 14, 15, 16, where the child or the teenager begins to develop their own sense of identity and develops their own aura. So a child from 0 to 13, when they have not had the proper constant affection and attention, which is what happens to me most, right? So we have difficulty in other parts of our lives as we grow up. When you meet someone that has constantly slept with a parent till the age of 9 or 10, everybody says that's wrong, but in a sense where there has been a constant nurturing element that has actually taken place. Energetically, that person processes feelings and emotions very different compared to someone that doesn't. And so crib babies usually are like, be a good girl or be a good boy. I mean, that was sort of like my mother, like, don't be a nuisance and things of that nature. Which basically means that we are constantly sitting, waiting for the universe to tell us what we need to move through our heart. We're waiting for our parents, the universe, the influences around us to tell us what we should experience in our heart. But when a child is constantly, from the age of 0 to 13, in the presence of the mother, on the lap, the father, it needs the heartbeat. It develops its own aura, basically, even though it duplicates the parent. But it develops that aura. That child is so unafraid. It has emotions and feelings, but that child is so liberated in their own right. They don't have the same difficulties in not absorbing the mother, the father, the aunt, the uncle. They're very self-sustainable in their own identity compared to where most of us are crib children, and we're always worried about, we're very sympathetic and very worried about, and we pick up everything around us, and we get into done because that is a very classical symptom of a crib baby. They did statistics of alcoholic parents who would pass out on the couch with their children laying on them or near them. Those children, even though they went into therapy later on, could absolutely process the anger and disappointment and the rage much more productively than children that were in a crib because they never got the emotions that they needed to have because they were crib children. Do you understand that? So even though the mother could have been a lousy mother, she could have been an alcoholic, she could have been, but if that parent was physically attentive to her children, even if she passed out and her kids laid with her, that parent gave that child a greater potential to develop their own soul's identity compared to a parent that had a crib child. A child that has had that constant physical presence knows how to utilize this energy of the heart more easily, more naturally than a child that has not. A crib child is withdrawn from the universe.
So there is no universal energy.
Well, technically there is, but do they feel in union with the universe?
Okay.
They do not.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for, because either
they're isolated.
There's a disconnect.
There is a disconnect.
And
they're waiting for the world to dictate to them
right.
what their actions, emotions, and feelings will be or ought to be.
Right.
It is the isolation that we experience, right? And so our hearts develop differently. And we do get to a particular point where our need of intimacy, our need of meaning in our lives, the need to evolve is so much more intense with those children than with anybody else. It's odd because their desire for liberation is so humongous